Hey everyone, welcome back to DSC 10. So today we're going to finish talking about table methods, and then we're going to move on in the next lecture to talking about probability and statistics, which I think is the really cool part of the course. So today we're going to cover a sort of hodgepodge of different things, a couple new table operations, and then we'll talk about some basic Python stuff in if statements and for loops. All right, so let's talk about more grouping. We've already talked about how to use group by, but there's a little bit more that's left to be said. So let's remember group by. Let's pull in our familiar NBA data set. I'm going to rename some columns here, set the index to be the player name. And so this is just a reminder of what data we have to work with. So how big is each team? This is something that we would use group by for. And again, the way that I kind of tipped off to know that a group by is the right thing to use here is that the question is asking something about each team. If I see the word each, I immediately think group by. Okay, so I'm going to group by team, and then I'm going to count how many teams are in each group, or sorry, how many rows are in each group, which will tell me how many players are on each team. So I'll group by team, and then I will apply the count aggregator, and I will get the number of players on each team. So remember, these column names here are meaningless. This is not the number of anything to do with position. This is not a number having anything to do with salary. It's just the number of rows that were in each column. And that's counting the number of players on each team. How much does each team pay in payroll? So again, I see the word each. I think group by. I'll group by team. And this time I'll use the sum aggregator. And remember, it'll throw out all of the columns for which it doesn't make sense to use sum. So for example, position, that's a string. It doesn't make sense to add the strings together. So the only column I'm left with is the salary column. And what I see here is the sum of all the salaries for each team. How many of each position does each team have? Well, this is a little bit different than the question that we asked before. I'm using each 2 times in this question. So that's kind of a tip that this is a little bit different. What would I group by if I was trying to use group by for this question? Do I group by each team? Well, then what do? I want to count how many of each position I have within each team. Well, it seems like I need to group by twice. I need to group within the groups. It turns out we can do that with group by if we pass, instead of just a single column name, we pass a list of column names. So here I have group by. I'm going to first group by team, the team column. So I'm going to make groups of rows which belong to the same team. And then I want to count the column, or the number of each position within that group. So just to show you what I get whenever I group by team, let's see. Let's just do a quick query here. Let's get the Cleveland Cavaliers, and get the team column. That's equal to Cleveland Cavs. Okay, so we do this query, and if I could scroll down, you would be able to see that there are multiple players in each position. So the C, that's for center. You see you have 1, 2, 3, 4 centers on the team. Point guards, you have 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So this is one of the groups that I get by whenever I group by team name. Now I want to group this data by the position column and apply the count aggregator. So I can do that if I just pass in a list of column names to the group by method. And then I use the count aggregator, and you'll see what I get back here, excuse me, is a table with a funny looking index. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. But you read this as, I have the team Atlanta Hawks, and here's each position on that team and how many players there are in each position. And again, I see salary column here. That name doesn't really mean anything because this is the count of the number of rows. So it's the number of salaries I saw, if you want to think of it that way. So the Atlanta Hawks have 5 shooting guards. they have 3 centers, 2 power forwards, and so forth. So it's done this for each team, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, so to make this more precise, we could even group within the groups. So instead of grouping by just 2 columns, we could group by column 1, and then within those groups, group by column 2, then within those groups, group by column 3, and so forth. You could have as many as you want. Usually you don't want to go beyond 3, and like 90% of the time that you're grouping by multiple columns, you're probably just grouping by 2 columns. This happens in order. You group by column 1 first, then by column 2, then by column 3. And it's within each group the grouping happens. Okay, so I mentioned that this index looks a little funny. If you take a look at this. So this is what's called a multi-index. It actually has multiple levels, right? So you have an outer level, which is the team. And then within each team, you have another index, the position. Now, this isn't super confusing. It's actually kind of a useful feature, but there's a whole lot more that we would need to learn in order to work with multi-indices. So we won't actually need to use multi-indices that much in this class. So we're just going to sort of leave that for a future topic. You can read about them on your own if you'd like. But still, it might be useful to have this information as part of our table in order to be able to do something with it. And the trick here is that if I want to take this stuff in the index, the multi-index, I can move it back to the table with the reset index method. So I'll take this table, I will reset the index, and what it'll do is it'll take all of that over, make them columns in our table, and the index will just be simply numbers. So now you can still read off of this and see, okay, how many point guards are on the Atlanta Hawks? There are 2. All right, let's try to answer a different question. Which team has the most centers? So I can get the position counts using a group by. So I'm going to group by team and position like I did before. I'll count and reset index, just like this. Okay, so I have the same table that I had last time. Now, how do I figure out which team has the most centers? Well, what I can do here is I can select only the rows corresponding to centers, and then sort and find the team name. So let's write this code here. I have a table called position counts. I will select only the centers, so position counts, get the position column, and find where that is equal to C. So I'm left with this. And so I have, for every team, I have the number of centers that they have. Now I can sort values. I'm going to sort by the salary column. The salary column contains the count of centers on each team. And I have the sorted table in ascending order. So the Cleveland Cavs and the Denver Nuggets both have the same number of centers. But if I wanted to get this programmatically, I could ask for the name of the team. I want Cleveland Cavs. Remember, this is a column now. It's not the index. So the way I do that is I get, and then I loc or iloc. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the team. So that gives me a series. And now I want to get the last thing in this series. I'm going to use iloc. iloc -1. And so if you could see it, it says Cleveland Cavs. Okay, how about we take a look at a different data set, one that's a little bit closer to home. So what about sea surface temperatures in La Jolla? So they've gone out and measured the temperature of the ocean in La Jolla every day since August 22nd, 1916, and here's that data. So we have the year, month, day, and then the surface temperature in degrees Celsius, hopefully, because that'd be really cold otherwise. So an interesting question to ask here would be, what is the hottest month according to average temperature? Okay, so I'm going to delete this code so we can just write it out and understand it better. So I'm going to create a table called hottest using ctemp in descending order of temperature. That's the note to myself. So what is the hottest month on average? So first thing I want to do is I want to group by here because I want to compute something for every month. I want to compute the average temperature for every month. But the first thing to think about is, what do I group by? So remember, this is my ctemp. Okay, this is my data. I'm with the average temperature per month. Now, maybe the question needs to be a little bit more precise, because what this means here is, what was the average temperature in August 1916, and then September 1916, and then October 1916, and so forth, all the way to May 2019. Okay, it's not asking like, what was the average temperature in all Januaries, all Februaries, and so forth. That's a different question. So with the former question, the first question I asked, I have to do a group by followed by a group by, because here I have to group by year column. Okay, group within the years. Okay, and then within each year, group by the month. Oops, I have to aggregate first. Okay, so, or sorry, I have to give two column names, year and then month. Let's try this. Okay, so I have a group by object. I want to find the average within each, so I will take the mean, and then I see that the average day within the month of August of 1916 was 26.44. Okay, the average surface temperature was 19.31. This is what I want, this column, surface temp. So I'll go ahead and I will get the surface temperature column. Okay. Now you see what I have here is I have an index, a multi-index. So perhaps what I should have done before that is to reset the index to get rid of the multi-index. And now I have a series of surface temperatures. You know what, actually though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that in because I want those names. So what I'll do here is I'll do a trick. I think we talked about this before. I've got a series back here, but what I want is a table. So if you put square brackets around this, you make it a list, it will return a table, even if you just ask for one column. Okay, now I will do reset index. And I have the table I want. Okay, so I group by with multiple columns. I compute the average within each group. I did this little trick here where I passed in a list of one thing to get, and that returns me a table. And then I reset index to move the multi-index back to columns within the table. Now I'll go ahead and save this. I'll call it hottest as the comment suggests. And then I can ask, okay, find, oh, I need to sort this too. So let's format this a little nicer here. So we have a group by average, get the column, reset index. And so this is what we have so far. And now in order to find the hottest month, I want to sort this. It says in descending order, so I will sort values by surface temp and ascending equals false. All right, so there we go. So we see that the hottest month in terms of average sea temperature was August of 2018. And the temperature got up into like 80 degrees Fahrenheit that month. It was pretty warm. So we can see that if I ask for get the year and get ilog 0 and tell me 2018, if I get the hottest month, it'll tell me this is August. Or if I try to see it, all right, it'll tell me it's August, I promise. Yep, see, look, August. Okay, great. Okay, so here's just another plot for our curiosity. So the yearly average surface temperature. So I'm just going to group by a year. I'm going to take the average temperature in the year, and then I'm going to plot the surface temperature. And what you see is that up until like 70s, the sea surface temperature was relatively constant. Even kind of took a little bit, maybe of a dip here. It's kind of hard to tell if that's just due to noise or whatever. But ever since then, it's been on a steadily increasing march from around, say, 16.5, 17 degrees Celsius up to, I don't know if that trend line probably goes to about 18.5. So that's kind of troublesome. I mean, unless you're a surfer, that's probably good news because then the water's warmer. But apart from that, it's not good for the seals, that's for sure. Okay, so we've seen this extra bit of functionality with group by where we can pass a list of columns to make subgroups. And the one thing to remember with using group by in this way is that it's going to create that multi-index, which is a little bit tricky to work with. So we'll just use reset index always after doing a group by with multiple columns.